In this video, we're going to talk about how to assess probabilities. And in a previous video, you probably saw how to make proof points. So we're going to kind of assume you know what those are and go from there. So we're going to walk through this procedure. And if you look at this graphic, it shows you kind of the basic elements. First thing is you've got to connect your proof points to the actual project plan. And then define the proof point. Look at the question of how you would know. And this is really a challenging question. In fact, this video is going to be just about how you would know. And a subsequent video is going to get into the next steps around assessing the probability, which has to do with reasons for optimism and pessimism, getting numbers, and then laying it out in this kind of nice format here that records the right kind of information. So to show you how you define the proof point and answer this how you would know question, I want to return to this HP example we talked about in the previous video. So you may recall they're trying to make an ATM of photo printing, and their proof point is, will people change their behavior when they use it? They already know people love it. So how might you define such a proof point? So I'm going to go over to the board here and write this out. So their proof point is behavior change. Now we have to think about this in the context of a project plan with actual time in it. And for them, they have multiple phases, and this is kind of a phase 2 thing. They've got the thing defined, and now they're testing it, developing it, and proving it out for that. So this for them is a phase 2 issue. So you think about where your proof points might go with respect to your project plan. Sometimes proof points belong kind of in many phases, but basically pick one where you're really going to learn the most information. So once you're clear about kind of where it sits in the project plan, you want to move in to define the question, how would you actually know in the context of that plan and timeline? So their idea for behavior change is to saturate a zip code. So this is kind of the prep. What are you doing to drive this proof test? So they've picked a particular geography where they know a lot of people are, and they're going to go put a lot of these machines around and have technicians there ready to support them. So the next question is kind of what are they looking at? And what they're really interested in is return behavior. That is, do people come back? So they have this idea of a return purchaser. And as they develop this idea of a return purchaser, they realize that they need to actually, as part of the setup, develop some awareness. So they want to do some initial marketing to get people aware of it. And then they want to get their return purchaser. So what is a return purchaser for them? To define the return purchaser, you've got to talk about what that really means. So a return purchaser, they come back once or twice or over what period of time, and you want to make a definition that really helps propel the project forward. But for them, they make a first purchase, and then they come back, return within a week. And what they want to measure is the purchase behavior. So that is, they spend $5 or more on these prints. So that's kind of the person they're tracking. They got a definition of that. Now I've put some specifics in here about a week and $5 and so on. And folks will kind of push back against that. So you want to put a stake in the ground. I'm not so worried that it's exactly right, but that it's directionally correct and gives you a kind of cartoon sketch of something that you can go get more detail later. The critical thinking about being specific is very, very helpful for this. So we've got the prep, we've got kind of what's being measured. Now we need to know what the scope and scale of this measurement is. See, one return purchaser, that's not a very difficult test, but like how many? So what they need is, of 1,000 people who purchase, so this gives you the scope and scale, I can't spell, of the 1,000 people who purchase. So 1,000 is a significant enough number. This is a retail commercial business. They said 20% or more. So they wanted to give themselves a pretty difficult standard. Some people will come back just because it's kind of cool. They want to show their friends. But a lot of them will come back because they have an intent to use. So that's their test. And if we go back to the kind of procedure here, You can see a good proof point answers the question how you would know. So what you need to do here is create an objective definition around a single locus of meaning or idea, in this context, behavior change. Now it typically has kind of 4 basic elements. The preparation or the setup. That usually provides context. It may be clear, but you might need to think about it a little bit. The second thing is the test. What information is actually gathered? What's the scope and scale of this information? So here we're talking about 1,000 return users. The metrics, what's being measured. Here it's how many come back, and in particular how much they spend. It's the purchase behavior. And finally the criteria. What is the standard of success? How high do you have to go? And you want this criteria to be really meaningful for the business. Now you may find you have to sort of iterate between this and the project plan a little bit, because you want the proof point to be significant. If I pass this proof point, I've removed doubt about this issue, and people are ready to double down. You also want it to be decisive. If this proof point doesn't work, then really this idea is kind of done and you're going to have to force a pivot. So you might need to adjust these 2 things together. So now go off and try to make a proof point and define how you would know. And when you're ready, come back and we'll have another video on assessing the probabilities themselves.